quick Bible study. I just wanted to touch on the topic of King David and Jonathan having a homosexual relationship. So for some reason, this has been a thing for quite some time now. They feel like homosexuality in the Bible was acceptable. And this is one of the conversations that they have regarding that. If you read 1 Samuel chapter 18, it begins with Jonathan taking off his robe, taking off his clothes, his sword and everything, and laying it before David. And people use that to say, well, see, Jonathan and David loved each other. And the verse also said he loved him as his own soul. And they're saying that, he loved him and they had a homosexual relationship and so forth and so on. But if you go back to 1 Samuel chapter 16, you see David is anointed as the next king of Israel after Saul. So Jonathan is Saul's son. Jonathan loved David like a brother. And in 1 Samuel 18, he's taking his robe off. It said his robe. It didn't say he got completely naked. He took his robe off, and underneath they wore tunics and things underneath their clothes. He took the robe off, gave him his robe, he gave him his sword and things to indicate, I'm giving you this seat. I am not claiming the heir. I acknowledge that you are the anointed one, and I'm passing this to you. That's all that was. And if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 20, starting at verse 40, I'll read this. This is when Saul is hunting David. Saul wants to kill David because he's supposed to be the next king. And it says in verse 40, and Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad and said unto him, go, carry them to the city. And as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of the place towards the south and fell on his face to the ground and bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another as a greeting. If you remember back in Matthew 26, Judas said, the one who I kiss, that is the one that you take. When he was talking to the soldiers that were going to take Jesus from the garden to take him in, as a prisoner, he said, the one I kiss is the one that you should take. Why was he kissing him? It was just a greeting. You and I, people greet today with kisses. I don't understand why that's such an issue. But it says here in verse 41, after David bowed himself 3 times, they kissed one another and they wept one with another until David acceded. They kissed and wept because of the situation that they were going through and David was leaving. So he greeted him with a kiss, and they talked and they wept and they basically said farewell to each other. Verse 42 says, and Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for as much as we have sworn by of us in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he rose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. If they were homosexuals, why would they be discussing each other's seed, meaning their descendants, their lineage? Why would they be saying basically, God be with you and your descendants, and God be with me and my descendants? God be amongst us and our children and our families forever. Study to show thyself approved. That's what the Bible says, guys. It's a little context goes a long way. They were not having a homosexual relationship. They just loved each other as brothers. Simple as that.